Financial Capability for Youth and Child Welfare presentation. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Ms. Christy Stankovich. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Welcome to this afternoon's or this morning's webinar, wherever you are from. And I would like to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded. We will have one interactive polling question, and at this time, all phone lines are muted and will open up for Q&A towards the end of the presentation. Attendees will be able to address any question by phone or via the chat questions pane feature on your GoToWebinar. If we are unable to address any or all questions, we'll be answering the remaining questions in a handout after this webinar. At this time, I will turn it over to Matt Hudson of the Capacity Building Center for States.
Hi, thanks, Christy. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Matthew Hudson, as Christy mentioned. I'm the Program Area Manager for Youth Development with the Center for States. And today, we're going to learn more about how to use the Financial Empowerment Toolkit to build the financial capability of youth transitioning out of foster care. You'll see our larger overview on the screen for you. And then to get started, we're going to just do a brief overview of what our agenda for today's presentation is on the next slide. So we're going to start with just really brief introductions, and then we're going to go into an overview of the Capacity Building Collaborative and the Capacity Building Center for States, followed by an overview of the Financial Empowerment Toolkit, and then some information on financial capability in child welfare, and then we'll follow that up with a question and answer period at the end. So moving on, in terms of brief introductions, I already mentioned my name is Matt Hudson, and I manage the program area of youth development. Also presenting today, you're going to have Lynne Wright, who is a program area advisor with the Center for the Youth Development Area. We also have Kim Lemcke, Minnesota Independent Living Coordinator, who will be presenting after the overview of the Financial Empowerment Toolkit. And then for those of you who were in attendance at the first webinar in this series, Kori, Hattemer, Associate Director of Savings and Financial Capability with the Corporation for Enterprise Development, will also be available during our question and answer period to help answer any questions anybody may have about relating the information gained in the first webinar that she presented with the information that you're learning here today. Next slide. So in terms of our webinar objectives, our ultimate goal is that we're going to, participants will hopefully be able to use this financial empowerment toolkit to help youth build financial capability. More specifically, during this webinar, we are hoping that participants will be able to gain a deeper understanding of how financial capability is included in programs serving youth and child welfare, discuss the application of tools related to engaging youth in financial capability programs, share experience providing financial capability services, discuss the financial priorities of youth, identify services that may help youth build financial capability, and determine how they can use the Financial Empowerment Toolkit to provide financial capability services to youth. And with that, we'd just like to move now into talking a little bit about the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative. In October 2014, IACF International was awarded a contract by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Children's Bureau, to establish the new Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative. The Center for States, the Center for Tribes, and the Center for Courts are partners in the Child Welfare Capacity Building Collaborative, which consolidates services that had previously been provided by National Child Welfare Resource Centers. This consolidation increases coordination, leverages resources, and provides more strategic service provision. Our goals are to work with partners and jurisdictions to support capacity to lead to improved outcomes for children and families. Next, we do this by partnering with states, territories, tribes, and courts to identify, design, and implement innovative solutions that meet the unique needs of each jurisdiction. And lastly, in this overview, is the Center for States specifically, which is the branch that we work with and who is providing this webinar today. And the Center for States serves state and territorial public child welfare agencies in Title IV waiver demonstration jurisdictions. Maggie Bishop is the Center's project director. ICF International supports the Center for States. You might recognize ICF from our work with the Child Welfare Information Gateway, as ICF has a long history of working on technical assistance contracts with the Children's Bureau and other government agencies. The Center for States aims to provide evidence-based, capacity-building support services that will improve performance and support states and territories in effectively initiating, implementing, and sustaining change and innovation. To achieve this goal, we work with our partners to create and deliver coordinated, inclusive, and well-informed capacity-building services. And with that, we can get to the meat of our presentation today, and I will turn it over to Lynne Wright to discuss the Financial Empowerment Toolkit.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Matt. I would like to first address how this Financial Capability Toolkit came about. The National Resource Center for Youth Development partnered with a team with the Corporation for Enterprise Development, also known as CFED, and partnered with the Children's Bureau. And this was about a year ago, a little bit more. We've received a lot of good reviews and have a lot of interest. So we wanted to share with you how this can help the child welfare agencies prepare older youth for their transition to be more empowered over their financial matters as young adults. Basically, building this capacity is considered and demonstrated by the Administration for Children and Families as a critical aspect to supporting the vision that they have for children, youth, and families, and individuals and communities who are resilient, safe, healthy, and economically secure. So this financial capability is a concept that was developed out of the need to talk about something a little bit broader than the financial education or financial literacy, which were common terms used. So, well, as an example of that, someone may be educated about financial concepts, but if they're unable to access safe, affordable financial services, which youth and foster care often are limited to that, they're not able to act on their own knowledge. So financial capability is a framework for taking a broader approach to laying the foundation for economic well-being and stability. So the knowledge and skills involved in building financial capability overlap with many of the other elements of this life skill competencies that are involved in preparing youth for adult life after foster care. And so oftentimes the consideration for options to enhance decision-making and postponing gratification, practicing behavior change, managing resources, setting goals, those are all life skills that can also integrate with financial education and financial skill building. So one of the approaches or strategies that we would like to try to encourage agencies to use is to integrate financial capability concepts across the board and integrate them into programs, protocols that you're already using in your programs. There are increasing complexities and availability of financial products, and the impacts that they have in all aspects of our lives are important for us. So we all really need to become a little bit more financially savvy and capable. Technology's changed a lot, the way people do banking and credit, and it's also made us a little more vulnerable to identity theft, or at least we feel like we're more vulnerable to identity theft and other financial risk. So the increased influence of credit scores and the availability of commercial products have made it a little bit more critical and important that we take a more comprehensive approach to achieving and managing financial security for young people who will be exiting on their own. And it falls, again, upon the child welfare systems to ensure that these skills are taught and practiced and that youth are prepared to put those skills into action when they leave care. This often has been happening through life skills instruction provided through independent living programs across the country. so we really thank and welcome all of the independent living coordinators that are attending today. We have nearly every state in the union represented here, or I would say a substantial amount. But we would like to propose an alternative strategy to the often isolated and sporadic attention that addresses financial capability, and suggest that a more comprehensive approach that would be more effective to equip young people with the skills and tools they need to navigate the financial systems and become financially secure as adults. So, integration of key components throughout the various supports that are already a part of your program service delivery can really help maximize the impact of your efforts. And we want to do that by helping you, providing this guide as one of the tools that you can use to help do this. What you're seeing on the screen now is a cover of the Financial Empowerment Toolkit for youth and young adults in foster care. So this is what it looks like on the outside. It's a substantial piece, 33 pages, including an introduction and background rationale. It offers strategies, some useful tools, resources, and references for use in program development. Excuse me just a moment. Not a time to lose my voice. Okay. I hope I can continue. I apologize. This toolkit's designed to provide caseworkers, independent living providers, congregate care providers. We have foster care, resource parents, and other supportive adults with strategies and resources to be able to critically evaluate and improve their current approaches to financial capability. It's designed for those working with youth under the age of 18, starting at 14, and also young adults over the age of 18 or who are preparing to transition out of the foster care system, who may be in extended foster care or supervised living arrangements. But it also can be used by other entities, runaway and homeless youth, youth involved in the juvenile justice system. It can be adapted, so it's very useful. We hope to have you utilize this in your program development and in practice to more methodically choose and integrate new strategies in the program interventions and to improve your financial capability. What makes this publication useful is it is comprehensive, and as I said, it applies to other service fields, but the elements of financial capability are focused on child welfare. The concepts and tools in this example are directly related to supporting financial capability among youth and young people in foster care and the special circumstances that are challenges faced by young people that do not have parents as co-signers, will not leave and have family support to fall back on. So the examples and the strategies used really target and focus in on their needs. So as you navigate the toolkit, you'll find background information on the financial capability field, an explanation about why financial capability skill building is needed. I think we all really have a good understanding of that. Information about the target population and the barriers that youth in foster care face, but also very useful for you would be the assessment tools, planning tools to help with execution, and a lot of tangible resources. The toolkit contains 3 main sections and 3 appendices. We have a section on the importance of financial capability for young people, cover the financial capability concepts. It explains how core financial capability concepts apply to youth and young adults transitioning out of care. We have a section on service delivery strategies, which talks about how to seamlessly integrate financial capability into programs that work with youth and young adults in foster care. The appendices include tools. There are tools that are targeted to youth and young adults, tools that are targeted for caseworkers that directly work with youth, programs that work with young people, and supportive adults to integrate these financial capability strategies. All stakeholders that work with young people are the target of these tools. We also have in the Appendix 2, Learning Styles. It discusses the theoretical educational concepts that are important to consider as programs formulate their financial capability integration strategies. That's intended for all audiences and is a really good, strong rationale for how these approaches came about. So we can move on to the next slide. Financial capability, as we know, is a critical step towards financial security, and we propose that it takes a combination of knowledge, skills, and access to attain financial capability. We would like to offer a definition of financial capability as it can be defined as capacity based on knowledge, skills, and access to manage financial resources effectively. Johnson and Sheridan in 2007 proposed a definition of financial capability that's also really appropriate. It is the ability of individuals to understand, assess, and act in their best financial interest. So based on this, there still are many people, regardless of socioeconomic background, that may lack one or more factors of this financial capability equation that you see up here. It takes all three of these to bring about capability. And while the tool's focus is on capability, it's important to recognize that other strategies play a role. We all understand that, as an example, a requisite aspect of financial capability includes financial education, so that individuals have the knowledge of budget strategies, understand the importance of credit and credit scores, and how they work. But financial education by itself is really not sufficient to ensure sound financial footing. So one example would be to know about banking products. And what does that does not ensure that in practice the young adult will be able to manage a bank account to avoid the overdraft fees. So they really need to have opportunity to practice these skills, and not just through simulation or in games and learning tools that are offered on the internet or in group classes, that young people really need the opportunity to have hands-on experiences, normal opportunities to venture out to the institutions, to meet financial experts, to actually get the feel and feel confident about that they could do this on their own. It's to enable them to learn how to go out and manage for themselves, to make decisions. But knowledge and skills together is very important, but if they don't have access to the resources, and I don't just mean access to get to the resources, but if there are not financial products that are youth-friendly or that can engage youth in actually being a part of an account, whether it be a savings or a checking or any financial service or product, then they're not going to fully develop those skills until they're out on their own. And we would really like to encourage states to partner with, reach out to the community, find financial institutions that can understand the value and the need that young people in foster care have, and as far as co-signing and the challenges that they face, so that there is true access to those resources out there. It takes all three of these to reach financial capability, and that's the goal, is to make sure that in the work that you do, that you are covering these three bases before the youth step out on their own. Okay, so the next slide will cover the underlying principles to the premise of this toolkit: mutual goal setting, simulations or experiential learning opportunities for youth, and community resources. These principles, we feel, should be embedded in the agency goals and include education for staff and providers as well. Policy could outline expectations that are embedded in daily life of providing the services to young people. In case management, assessments, home visit notes, court reports. Make sure that these concepts, these tools are part of every aspect of the daily service delivery to young people. You can determine how to hold professionals and caregivers and youth even accountable for the progress. As I said earlier, starting with simulations, whether through a computer or animated products, lessons, often at teen conferences, those are wonderful ways to gain knowledge, but we need to involve youth very early in transition planning, goal setting. Even by the age of 14, they need to be purposefully focused on how financial matters and credit impact their lives, exploring the values and desires and their interests, to set these goals and to get them to understand that it relates to money and that they need to be beginning to budget, manage time, and use their skills in the financial world as well as in their adult social settings and their job skills. So the next slide is the Financial Capability Core Competencies. Financial Literacy Education Commission, also known as FLEC or FLEC, developed a set of financial education core competencies to which provide a simple framework or a baseline for understanding what people should know how to manage financial affairs. The 5 core competencies are earn, spend, save and invest, borrow, and protect. Financial capability core concepts and the application to programs that work with youth in foster care. Core competencies and financial capability. In 2011, the Financial Literacy and Education Commission developed this set of core competencies, and it is integrated into some of the school system education curricula, and is really basic to the main features of the things that you need to ensure that the young people have in understanding what youth, including youth in foster care, should know about managing money to enhance their financial well-being, but also staff and the providers that work with young people really need to have a good understanding, at least a basic understanding of these, and be competent with them. With each of the core competencies, there are a number of elements. For example, under the concept of earn, and I think we can go on to the next slide to give an example of what we mean by the core competency earn. We provide this for each one. I guess we're skipping earn. We're moving on to spend, but we have one for each of the 5 core competencies. But an example of the competency of spend, the knowledge that a young person would need would be to know how to prioritize spending choices given available resources. They would need to have input or receive knowledge about long-term versus short-term implications of their spending habits. The action and behavior that one would expect or be able to assist them with would be to set their financial goals, get the youth to talk about what their interests are, what their goals are, and help them set realistic financial goals. A competency in that area would be they should be able to track their spending habits, develop a spending plan, and live within their means. Part of that's comparison shopping and understanding the effects of their spending decisions. So they should be allowed to make some mistakes that won't be devastating to them, but and to review what those mistakes mean, and did they learn from them, and what might they change. Opportunities that child welfare agencies and the staff that work with them can provide would be, as we talked about, simulations on spending plans. There are many of those online, good, reliable ones that are in our resource section that we could recommend. post-transition spending plans. There are simulation impact of mismanaging funds, and teen grants as opportunities to comparison shop and so forth. Another area of competency, next slide, that we provide in this guide is borrow. So again, you see the knowledge, the actions and behavior, and the opportunities and examples under that for borrow. So we do this with each one of the competencies. The next one that we provide in this demonstration is protection. Identity theft is really important, and under protection, the knowledge that the young person, a basic knowledge would be, if you borrow now, you pay back more later. That's a concept that may not be understood. The cost of borrowing is based on how risky the lender thinks you are, and that depends on their credit score. So that is where you bring in the importance of building good credit history and finding out what your credit score is each year, beginning as early as required at the age of 14. We need to be collecting their credit scores. And actions and behavior. We would expect them to understand how and when to use credit, to be able to shop around for loans, and to decide what's best for them, to understand their credit report and their credit score. Some opportunities would be to use realistic simulations again, buying a car, discuss how to shop for credit. If they do not have funds coming in, still these simulations can be very effective, the next best thing. If they don't have access to money, we can certainly go through scenarios with them on a regular basis to make it as real as we possibly can. Work with youth to read credit reports and resolve errors. This is a struggle that a lot of states are facing, is not only getting the reports, but then ideally, we would love for every young person from the age of 14 on to be able to sit down with someone who can help them understand their credit report, the usefulness of it, the importance of it, so that when they move on their own, they're able to have that habit of accessing it yearly, looking it over, and checking it twice. But as it stands, most states are struggling with even just being able to bring those credit reports to the young people who actually have something come back on a report, which means something needs to be resolved. So if you have the opportunity to review these with the young people, it's important to be able to understand it yourself as the person working with the young people. So again, opportunities would be based on the training and the knowledge of those people that are working with the young person. So I think we can move on to the next slide. Part of what is in the toolkit is a section on service delivery strategies. This would include comprehensive information on integration opportunities, integrating it into your program, provide steps to integration, examples on how to integrate the opportunities into your existing program, and financial capabilities in practice. Those sections are very valuable. It would be a luxury, again, for programs to be able to devote immense resources to the focus on developing youth capability. But we understand the reality is that programs that work with youth have many other outcomes they're required to achieve, and understanding that service providers need to think very strategically about how they're going to integrate financial capability work, how that work relates to their mission and their vision, and what barriers youth in foster care and people who are helping, the professionals who are helping the young people with respect to financial capability. Service providers may even want to consider how their own colleagues, in addition to the youth they serve, can benefit from financial capability services. In many cases, a provider we know often feel financially capable themselves, or maybe a bit uncomfortable advising youth and young adults in transition. not just in understanding that credit report, but just in talking about how credit impacts getting an apartment, getting a job, and how savings can really impact their confidence and their ability to continue to save, just putting back a little bit each day. Many of the professionals working with youth take on significant work on their own, but they may need to seek out some outside training. We're finding, especially in understanding the credit reporting, that special training is needed to become optimally effective. Once decisions have been made about the strategies that you want to include in your program, the program needs to have a concrete plan for how it will deploy the resources to reach specific objectives. This section provides really good information to service providers with guidance to develop a customized plan. So that's a very critical piece in this toolkit. The knowledge and skills of providers and staff and service providers with guidance. It provides guidance to develop a customized plan for integrating financial capability strategies. So it's very customizable. You can take pieces of it and integrate it, or you can just take the whole guide toolkit and use it as it is. Financial capability integration opportunities is another important section, and there are tables that offer program outcomes that focus on outcomes and focus, and then the financial capability integration opportunities offer examples like identifying the gaps, determining unique financial barriers, identifying partners within the community, and the resources to customize your integration plan. Identifying partners is very critical in many aspects. When you bring in partners, they are experts at what they're doing and what they know, and it relieves a little bit of the stress from the staff that may not feel comfortable sharing this or developing a new curriculum. And there are organizations in every area that are very willing to come in and help and don't have an objective of selling a product. They just have an obligation to come in and provide information and to provide education to groups. So they can work with staff, they can work with young people at teen conferences or on a regular basis through a series of educational seminars. Okay, so ideally implemented in a manner and in a time when it directly connects with another need being faced by the young person is really important. Consider the timing when you're reviewing your young person's goals and their hopes for the future, and you're trying to adapt these lessons. It's really important to find something that they really are interested in and a need that they have, and that's a good time to address these issues. We have a table in the guide that can support youth to attain the outcomes in each of the areas. It's a good starting place to think about how to integrate financial capability strategies. There are columns, program outcomes and focus, and another column for financial capability integration opportunities. So you can take an outcome focus such as employability, and then you can adapt that to how that capability integration, what opportunities there are to integrate that. You can review the credit reports to improve employment outcomes, checking credit reports and resolving issues, and things like that that are related to employability. And the table goes through several different outcomes, and along with each outcome, you have examples of an integration opportunity specifically related to the child welfare field. So once you're looking at the guide and you can review these and see these, it'll become a little bit more clear. I wish we had a page, every page of the guide to review as I'm reviewing this, as I'm talking about it. but I think that it will all come together once you have the piece in front of you. Another section covers steps to integration, and it has a small amount of detail on program orientation and assessment, program design, and program tactics and to-do lists. So that's a very important section as well. Finally, there's a section on financial capability in practice. And this table offers resources by level of intensity for each of the 5 core competencies that we mentioned. So it outlines a variety of potential financial capability integration strategies that are organized by each of the capability core concepts. As you proceed down the table, each row of the strategies requires more resources and more intensity to integrate it into your program. So it's very, you can take it and apply it to specific needs that you have in your program and the level of need that you have and the intensity that's needed to deliver to the young people. And it would help you really arrive at a more customized integration plan. Next slide. Using the tools, there is a section of the toolkit that offers an assessment. There's a section on leveraging partnerships with financial institutions. Goes into more detail with some recommendations. Educational theory, so that it discusses the different approaches and how they all work together to really build on the knowledge and experience as well. But you have group settings, you have individual settings, you have daily life settings, and all of these need to be working in conjunction with one another to really strengthen and reinforce what the young person is learning. There are models of financial education delivery offered in this, and then a section on resources. So I wanted to review or just briefly highlight one of the tools is it's a worksheet. How ready are you to work with youth? And it reviews some of the questions that you can consider when you're developing these to find out, sort of assess where your staff are and what kinds of educational and skill development are needed there before they begin to reach out. This is a tool to really identify the gaps of your own financial knowledge and pinpoint the resources so that you can include these in training courses, whether they be specifically focused on financial education or whether it becomes part of your core training. Another section that is really important is the collaboration, and it's devoted to leveraging partnerships. We're going to hear from some other folks today about how they leverage partnerships and funding and other resources that they receive from partners with lots of knowledge and tools. The contributors of the toolkit recognize that some members of this toolkit's audience may not feel comfortable about their own level of financial knowledge, as we've discussed, and so conveying financial concepts to youth and young adults really is a challenge. So your expertise in working with youth and young adults, you are not expected to become a financial expert. We need to highlight that point. This toolkit is intended to arm you with a host of tools and resources and reaching out to the community partners to help you spot financial issues and fill in some of those gaps and take some of the responsibility off of your work schedule. That we understand how very important that is. The resources identified in the Appendix 3 of this toolkit will help you locate partners that can assist you with financial capability skills building, how to leverage your partnerships, even credit, taxes, and insurance tips, and how to directly communicate with youth about filing taxes and so forth. I think yes. The Financial Empowerment Toolkit, part of the addendum was the development of tip sheets for directly designed by or in collaboration with young adults with experience. They helped put these together, and there are 5 of them addressing the different key important areas. These are directly targeting the youth audience. If the staff can take these and understand them and then take them and review them with the young people as the need arises, they are very, very effective. What you're going to see on each of these as we go through them is just the cover. Some of them are a 1-pager, some 2 and 3 pages long. Some of them also have worksheets that the young person can actually use to fill in and track their progress. This particular one is for addressing how the young person should develop a credit history, interpret the credit report. This one is really key for staff as well. It helps the staff really understand what is on that credit report and what it means and how they can go through it with the young person to help them understand it. It even talks about resolving issues. The next tip sheet designed for young people is about taxes, what you need to know about taxes. There are a lot of misunderstandings about earnings and who should file and who should not. And are they employees or are they independent contractors? And this covers the basics of that, and also has resources where they can go and find out more and find out details. And it's really very easy to learn more. Click a button and even go to the IRS website and find out some more tips. But this is the basics. And we are finding that a lot of our young adult consultants and young adults who participate in panels and so forth really lack a clear understanding of how they should be filing their taxes and even filing for credits and benefits. So this is a very useful tool. The next one is protecting yourself. This is really addressing the ID theft. So to protect yourself and your stuff, what you need to know about insurance. So it's not only on ID theft, but it's what are the basics that they need to do to insure an automobile, insure their personal belongings in their apartment. And there are some worksheets and some special tips that are featured in this one. The next tip sheet for young people is creating a credit profile, how to build your credit. This one really gets to the issue of the moves that they make in their credit, building credit, overdrafts, too many credit cards, and the balance between their credit and their income. It addresses a lot of those basic facts in very simple, to-the-point information. It talks about secured cards, secured loans, borrowing, and how they can get accounts, co-signing, and that sort of thing. So it talks about the importance, too, of the impact of a credit score on the other aspects of their life and how important it is to build a history and build a track record that you are a reliable individual, that you can support, that you can be relied on to pay your bills, to rent, pay a car loan, that sort of thing. So it's really a powerful, I think, tip sheet. And the next one is the one that's about identity theft and how to resolve the errors. And this is particularly important for those of you who are getting those credit reports back, and it gives you very simple, very important, critical, easy steps to what you should do. It even also has a section that addresses the challenges, the emotional challenges that young people in foster care face if they need to file a police report against a family member and the considerations they have there and the alternatives. This is a very, very important piece and very relevant to those of you who are working with the young people who have something that come back on their credit reports. So I say this is key. So the next slide, we have, there we go, financial empowerment, the gaps that we see across the states. There are a lot of states that are doing a lot of good work, and we have invited some to attend the webinar today, and we have a presenter today that's going to share what they're doing. But some of the issues that we've noticed that we really want to focus in on and help address are things, agency culture, and the fear and the anxiety that goes along with financial capability, and the fact that I mentioned earlier that it's piecemeal, it's here and there. You offer classes at teen conferences or in schools, but it really needs to be something that is integrated across every aspect of what they do. Foster parents need to be engaged. Your providers need to be engaged, caseworkers, and the courts, so that everyone is making sure that the 5 core competencies are addressed in daily life and that people are asking about it and following up to make sure that they're progressing towards them. So and that applies to the next, I jumped ahead a little bit, to the next little feature, which is purposeful integration. And that's what I was talking about there, is make it a point to include these core competencies in your assessments, in your court reports, in your daily checklists for your visits with your youth, your monthly visits, and consult with the judges and have them make sure that they're asking the important questions about the youth's progress in their financial capability goals. Targeted life skills questions. Make sure that that these questions again are in your life skills assessments, and that they are part of the next square is they're part of the youth-driven transition plan, and that you not only explore what goals the youth have, but you help them determine whether they are reasonable goals, are they realistic, and how they're going to get there. And in that consideration, you can't avoid finances and how they're going to budget their resources. So, and the other element is that's lacking a lot is recognizing the teachable moments. If it's integrated across the program, it doesn't become a burden. If there's a piece of it in your checklist for your home visits and a piece of it in your assessment, and it just permeates everything that you do, then you're making sure that you're covering all these necessary components. The other important key that seems to be needs a little bit of strength, and that would be to start young. You can start as young as 2 and 3 in teaching the concepts of postponing gratification, managing resources, making decisions about need and desire. But as early as 14, young people need to be really engaged in relating finances to adult life. And they need to be getting those not court reports, but their credit reports every year, starting at age 14. And eventually, if you can work it into your program, use these as teachable moments. And as I said, the next one, involving courts. Again, get with your court improvement plan on your post-adjudication boards and make sure that questions, that they're asking questions of the young people right in the court, at the court hearing. Are they progressing? What are their plans for the future for earning and budgeting, and do they have an account? And do they have access? And the other element is having youth be accountable for their progress and their learning. Diverse approaches. There are a lot of suggestions in this piece, but there are also other states that have developed toolkits and guides and documents that can be shared, and there's a lot out there that can be customized to the needs of your population. Know your population's needs, know your young person's needs, and where they are in their understanding and in their knowledge. And the next issue, which is really highly important, is that I think we didn't show the diverse approaches little box. And then the next one that's really important is it's often a challenge for young people to really have hands-on access when they don't have an income or tangible assets, or they can't get their hands on the funds that are coming to them. If they are able to manage these funds before they're out on their own with a little bit of guidance and a little bit of oversight, it will certainly help them when they leave care. So if you can devise ways in your policy to get the checks, the credit cards, debit cards directly in the hands of the youth and help them be able to budget that before they leave care, that's an immense help.
All right. Actually, this is Matt. I need to pop in just for a second before we go to our polling question. We had forgotten to mention before, but to everyone that has access to their webinar pane on the right side of your screen, we have this PowerPoint available to you as a PDF handout underneath the tab for handouts. So I wanted to let you know that for anybody that wants to follow along or look back with something that Lynne just talked about, you can access it there. Also, those images of the toolkit and those tip sheets, the link to view those is embedded in those images, so you can just click on them. But really the reason why I'm popping up is because I wanted to let you guys know that for some reason those links aren't working right now. The tip sheets and the toolkit that we're presenting on right now are available in two places, and that's the Children's Bureau website and the Child Welfare Information Gateway. And right now both of those are not working, but I have let people know, and so those should be working soon. So just the two quick notes is, one, you can follow along with the handout provided on the right side of the screen in the Handouts tab, and then two is if you're not able to access it, I'm having the same issue on my end, and we're hoping that it'll be fixed soon. Sorry, Lynne, didn't mean to throw off your vibe there.
That's okay. That's good timing, and I appreciate that. Yes, yeah, because it is quite a toolkit that is you need to get your hands on, and you need to go through it, and I think it's really exciting and very, very useful. And I want to say, after covering some of the gaps that we have, I want to also note that the field is not void of innovative practices around building financial capabilities. There are a lot of states and jurisdictions that have supported programs for young people to advance financial capability. Very exciting things happening, particularly for youth who are exiting care on their own. And we have match savings, financial education curriculum being developed, work groups, coaching and mentoring programs. And we're very happy to have the states, the independent living coordinators here today, and hope they chime in later. But we also are very excited to have someone here today that will present what they have going on in their state. Before we turn it over to Minnesota, we would like to ask the audience to chime in a little bit. With the credit reporting requirement, many states are struggling with the administration end of the accessing these reports, negotiating with credit reporting agencies and batches, et cetera. So with the federal requirement beginning at age 14 now, we'd like to know if, in spite of all the challenges that you're facing, is your state or agency using credit reports as a financial capability tool or in a teachable moment? So if you could respond to one of these, we are using credit reports for all youth in care over 14 years of age. We're only using credit reports when an issue is identified, or we are only able to obtain credit reports for some youth, or you can respond with none of the above. And all you need to do is just select one, and we'll tally the responses, see what we have with our pool of attendees.
Hi, Lynn. Pardon for the interruption. We have about 50% who's voted thus far, so you can wait just a few more seconds.
Good. Okay. Okay, so about 65% are using credit reports for all youth in care over 18. Wonderful. And then it's pretty equal down there about we're only using credit reports when an issue is identified. And from my information that I've received from the states, that's some of the larger states with the larger populations. Some are only using it are only able to obtain credit reports for some of the youth, and then we have about 13%, none of the above. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have comments and want to elaborate on that, we really would appreciate hearing from you. This is very interesting. It is a current challenge for many of the states, and could really be an opportunity for a future discussion among some of you, a phone call or something. I might remind you that we're launching the CapShare for Chafee leads and ETV leads, and it will be a place where we can engage in some of these discussions at a later date. So keep your patience with that. We've got about half of you on this group site, and as soon as that gets filled up, we'll be launching that and have a place to share all these discussions. So I know that you want to hear from your peers, so we have planned an opportunity for participants who wish to share during this webinar. After we hear from Minnesota, we have invited Kim Lemcke with the Minnesota Department of Family Services to talk a bit about the program there. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kim.
All right, thanks, Lynn. So I briefly wanted to talk about Minnesota's efforts to build financial capability. We have 6 different things that I'm going to talk about, and the first 3 are really for our general population, so they can be utilized from anywhere from youth all the way up through seniors. And then the last 3 that I'm going to talk about are specific to our foster youth. So the first one is Minnesota Financial Literacy Interagency Work Group. So what this is we have 10 state agencies that are participating in this work group. That's the Minnesota's Department of Commerce, Department of Corrections, Department of Education, Employment and Economic Development, Higher Education, Housing, Finance, Human Rights, Human Services, Military Affairs, and Revenue. So the focus of this group is the following: to increase communication and collaboration across the administration in order to improve and expand existing financial literacy programs, and also identifying new ways administrative-wide partnership may help ensure Minnesotans from kindergarten to retirement have the skills, knowledge, and resources they need to achieve financial security. And we have designated in Minnesota that April is Financial Capability Month, and so we do activities specifically in that month as well. The next one is Your Money, Your Goals for Social Services Toolkit. And Minnesota was a pilot project with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And this is a training that's designed to equip and empower frontline staff with the tools and resources needed to help their clients build skills managing money, credit, and debt. The Minnesota Department of Human Services offered this training to all child protection family assessment workers and parent support outreach workers. And they did this via 3 on-site trainings and also 1 webinar to try and get as many staff as we could. The third one is the 4 Cornerstones curriculum. This was developed through a federal grant given to the Minnesota Department of Human Services and along with Lutheran Social Service, and it teaches economic empowerment skills and financial knowledge using a learning circle group method. The next one is credit reports. So now this is specific to our foster youth. And just so everyone's aware, with Minnesota, we are a state-supervised, county-administered state, so a lot of our hands-on work is actually the counties, and the state develops the policy for that. So what we did is, at the department, we have the responsibility for maintaining agreements with 3 credit reporting agencies. So that's TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. And so quarterly, we submit batch reports of all youth in care between the ages of 14 to 17 who had their birthdays during a quarter and were in a continuous foster care placement of 30 days or longer. So as you can see on the screen, we have the credit reports quarterly listed that were run. Once we run these reports, we notify the county and tribal agencies of the agency or the youth who were submitted during that quarter, and then we provide them with the credit reports for that youth. So each agency that has a youth that was run, they will get 3 separate credit reports for each youth from each of those agencies. And we send that information either in mail, especially to our larger counties who have lots of youth that are in care and they receive a lot of credit reports, or we also send encrypted emails to the agency. So the slide shows a summary of our quarterly credit reports that were submitted, the number of youth with credit issues, and the types of issues. And I just wanted to note that when we started running these, we were very surprised with how many youth really did have credit issues. We weren't expecting that many. So you can see when we first started, that was obviously just the 16 to 17-year-olds. And now that we've started running the 14-year-olds, I mean, we've almost doubled our number of youth that we're running. And then as far as the county and tribal agencies' responsibility for youth under 18, once we send those credit reports, and we send the credit reports whether the youth have issues or not, so that they should be using those credit reports as those teaching opportunities to review the credit report, and just so youth know what they look like and what to look for, even if there aren't any issues on it. But if there are issues on the credit report, then the agency then needs to work with that youth to get those resolved. And then they should also be documenting that in our SACWIS system. And as far as youth over age 18, here at the department, so at the state level, we don't work with those youth. That's left to the county, since 18-year-olds and older can get their own credit report. So we just expect the county and tribal agencies to assist those youth in getting their own credit report and then going over that report with them, and again helping them if there are any issues that come up on their credit report. The other piece with the credit report is we do have some online videos that people can use that kind of go over the responsibilities, as well as, just educating everyone on how to do the credit reports. So the first one is actually for caseworkers to review so they can see what their responsibilities are. And the second one is for youth in care so that they can understand their credit. So with the caseworker one, you can find that one on, it's the University of Minnesota website. We partnered with them, and that can be found on the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare website. And the Understanding Credit for Youth, that can be found at their website as well. And so our next opportunity to work with youth is we have grants with 15 nonprofit agencies across our state to provide independent living skills for either current or former foster youth ages 16 to 21. And a lot of them do independent living skills groups, which includes money management groups. So they are working with our youth from anything with credit reports, budgeting, helping them get a checking or savings account and that type of thing. And then lastly, we have not only our grantees that do the groups, but also our county case managers work with our youth one-on-one, whatever their issue might be. Again, helping them understand their credit report, getting a savings account, going shopping, learning how to, comparison shop and those types of things. So that is what Minnesota is doing in our efforts. So thank you, and I will now turn it back over to Matt Hudson.
Hi. Thank you, Kim, so much. I think that's really great information. You did such a good job covering it quickly, but I mean, it's so awesome to see just like what you're able to do with the youth in your state, and I hope that our audience found it useful too. What we'd like to do now, just moving on, is we'd like to move into our questions and answers phase. And so there's two ways that we can that you as participants can ask questions. The first is that if you on your the right side your webinar panel, just as there was a tab for handouts where you can access the PDF of this PowerPoint, there should also be a questions pane or a chat pane. You can actually just type in your questions if you'd rather do that than join by audio. And I will read your question to the presenters and get you the information that you need if it's available. You're also able to we're able to unmute your phone so you can ask questions of the presenters. But for that explanation, I'd like to turn it over to our operator for those instructions.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please signal by pressing *1 on your telephone keypad. If you are using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Again, press *1 to ask a question. And there are no questions on the phone at this time.
And I don't see any either. Lynne had mentioned, too, that there are several states that are listening in. I would actually welcome for any state that, even if it's not a question, that might like to offer an example of something that they're doing. You could follow the same process, the *6 process, to speak on the line, and we'd welcome information that you'd be willing to share, too.
Okay, this is Lynne, and I do see that someone has a few people have the raise their hand feature selected. Can you help with that? Do they need to still instead press *1?
*1 to queue up for the phone. Yes.
Okay.
And we do have a question on the phone.
Okay.
All right. A voice prompt on the phone line will indicate when your line is open. Please state your name before posing your question.
Hi, this is Allison Schuler calling in from Hawaii.
Hello,
Hi,
Allison. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, Lynne had asked me to share just a little bit about what we're doing a little bit here, so I'll try to do that quickly. But thank you, everyone on the call. I think this is such an important thing, and it's so exciting, like many people have said, to see what's been going on. So just briefly, what we've sort of been doing in Hawaii is we work with the Jim Casey Initiative, and I just want to acknowledge that a lot of Jim Casey sites are probably on the call, so they also have a wealth of knowledge about what's been going on and are great resources to talk to. The two things that we've been doing that might be helpful for people is, one, our Opportunity Passport program, which was created by the Jim Casey Initiative, and that program is a match savings program. So basically what happens is for the youth, we do 8 hours of financial literacy training in a classroom setting. But then I think, like a lot of people shared, just the financial education is not always enough. And a lot of times you really need something to solidify the actions and actually following through with working with financial institutions. So what we do after that is we help the youth open a bank account. At our site, it's Bank of Hawaii, and we have a really good relationship with them. I think that's a critical relationship for sites to maybe have, is to work with local bankers and create that relationship, so that when we do go to the bank account opening with the youth, they know somebody at their branch, they talk to them, they see them in person, they know that they could potentially go ask questions of them later. And then what happens is once they've opened that account, they're allowed to put money in, and we match it. Each Jim Casey site is different. We do it 1-for-1. So if they say 500, we match 500, and we do it for purchases that make sense developmentally. So, when you were 18, your parents helped you get a vehicle or a security deposit and first month's rent, or educational expenses if you need a laptop for college, health care, and then one of the most recent ones, and Lynn, you mentioned just the importance of credit reports and being able to correct things, is we've started, Jim Casey approved that we could start using the funds to help with credit repair. So, if somebody has a bill in collections or they have an outstanding loan with a college and they can't get their transcripts, we can help pay off that. So I do think, I think that takes a little bit of legwork for other sites to set those up, but match savings is a possibility. And then we're starting off with financial coaching, which again, if you have a relationship with a local bank, it's pretty great because you can sort of use that in terms of getting your financial coaches. We're getting ours from Bank of Hawaii, and it's really just a volunteer-based, one-on-one time for a kid to ask, or a youth in care to ask any questions that they may have about financial things. I think a lot of times it can be intimidating to ask these questions, and so in a one-on-one setting it can be a lot easier. And then that also, the coaches also help prompt goals. Where do you want to be? You could be here. This is a place you could be, and I believe in that, and let's think about ways to get you there. So that's a little bit about what we're doing, and I guess in terms of funding, that's always the question. Our funding is all private funding, and so we have reached out to several foundations for grants here in Hawaii. But anything else, Lynn, that you think would be helpful?
Okay. Hey, Allison, this is actually Matt. I have a follow-up question if I could.
Yeah, sure.
About you mentioned that sometimes the funds can be used for to dispute or take care of one of the incidents that's on the report, if say it were a debt owed or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
In the instance, and I think this is something that states have seen, I don't know what level of frequency, but that the issues that are on the young person's credit report are due to a biological family member or someone not them using their Social Security information to do that. Is there discretion in when it seems like something where the money should be spent on that as opposed to helping the young person with filing like affidavits of forgery with the banks or some of those other processes that would need to be?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that in general, the first line of defense is always trying to get that corrected. Personally, because I haven't seen a lot of those. I don't know if other states have, so they may be better able to speak to that. But I don't think we've seen a lot of that here. A lot of the debts have been, the youth got a credit card or the car loan became too much, that sort of thing. But we definitely would look first to correct that. And actually, I think that's where, like you said, our knowledge sometimes can be limited in that. We can do the best that we can, but I think having that relationship with either a banker or somebody that the kid knows, so like a financial coach, it's great to be able to have that so they can go to them for that assistance. So yeah, that would be our first line, but most of the ones that we've seen have been debts that the youth have incurred themselves, just out of misunderstanding usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's often for a little older population, is it not? In Hawaii? Yeah. So those young people who have not attained an adult status yet, who might have a something on their credit, there's a step-by-step process where they have to place a fraud alert and they complete identity theft affidavit and all that. And if the relationship is tenuous and they're wanting to, reunite, it becomes a real touchy issue. And in those instances, financing that just to pay it off and clear it up and start fresh is an option if you have, like you said, the funding there to be able to do that.
Yeah, we definitely take it on a case-by-case basis. So each situation has different contexts, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Allison. That was really great info also. And so for Kim, Kori, and Lynne, and all three of you, I'm not really sure which one of you might have the most information, but we did have a question from one of the participants that says that the credit reports that they receive do not include credit scores. Is that an issue? And then I would also add, if you know, is that something that is a contracting issue with the TransUnion, Experian, or Equifax?
I would like to divert to other states. The credit score is different, so different than the credit report, and you often have to pay for the credit score unless you're going through some sort of a loan or something like that. Does any other state have any comment to that, any experience?
This is Kim from Minnesota. So we do not get the credit score. That is a separate feature or function, so that is not something that we have done. We just strictly stick with the credit report.
Okay.
And this is Kori with CFED. If you pull your annual credit report for free, only the report is available. You have to pay for the score. We've seen some organizations actually use some of their funding, their project-based funding, to pay to pull that with clients. And so, I don't know that anyone can access it at no cost. I think you have to find additional funding for it.
I would mention too, and I think this goes a little bit. I think Lynne did such a good job talking about a lot of the gaps that that we look with in financial literacy involves doing some of the same work with individualized work with the young people. So not everyone's going to come from the same situation, but if in terms of the credit score aspect, I know that a lot of companies, be it auto loans or credit cards, are now offering the credit scores free, to their lendees. So, even just myself, I know I've had a loan for I've had a lender for a long time and they didn't offer that before that they do now. So I think that might be a trend that's coming. So for those young people you're working with, if they still have the accounts and they're active, then and they're seeking their score, that might be a free option for them to get it. And so I just thought I would mention that. We also have another question, and Kori, this might be something that you can relate to, or Lynne. I think it relates a little bit also to what we talked about in our first webinar last month. But it's about any states that are participating in saving SSI benefits to dedicated accounts for foster youth beyond the federal limit. And we had a little bit smaller of an audience last time, so I didn't know if, Kim, that you've dealt with SSI benefits for matched savings accounts, or Allison, you mentioned a matched program there in Hawaii. And just basically, if anyone of our presenters or anyone had information about that aspect, the SSI aspect to the matched savings.
This is Kori with CFED. I don't know of anything in particular, but I'm happy to check with our Assets and Opportunity Network team, who keeps track of those things more closely, and see if they have any information.
Yeah, to my knowledge, they've raised the cap to pretty high, and it is. I'm not sure if it's a matter of once you reach that amount, if you can actually buy or spend it down, of course. But if you're buying assets that are, long-term assets, they might also count as the same thing and still put you in an ineligible for certain things. So that's one of the things that's really touchy and really needs to have an expert address that particular issue. And it would be great to have a at-a-glance tip sheet about that across the board, because it was really a common question that we have.
Great. And we had a comment from the audience, too, going back to the credit score issue, just confirming, too, that this person said that even just their bank account, they bank with a big bank, and even on their just banking account now, that they're offered their credit score, though for the young people, they're not able to get it as well. So I think I think what the answer kind of seems like to the person who asked the first question about we're not getting them, and is that an issue? It doesn't seem like that's an issue in terms of being able to offer assistance to remove incidents on the credit reports, because those that you can obtain for free, you can still then work with. I do think there's sometimes a value in having a credit score, because I think that it's valuable for the young people to know what it is, so that they have an idea of, how credible are they in terms of lenders. And I think that provides teaching moments, is that being able to work with youth to know what it means to have that credit score and things like that. And so I think that if you're interested in that, and if the youth that you're working with or the program it's important for you to have that information, I think you'll just need to work with the young people, like what is the bank that they're using, what kind of accounts do they have that are in good standing, and is that something where they can inquire whether that can be provided to them for free? Because I think we are seeing that as an option, but I don't think it would necessarily prevent work being done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's very, Inger Giuffrida has a piece of curriculum that is very interesting in that it reviews every move that you make and how it affects your credit score. So even closing a credit account can give you a little bit of a drop in your credit score, and something else can raise it up. And it's really interesting to go through that learning process and really see how your behavior and the things that you do that you don't think are related can really change your credit score, and it's very impactful.
Yeah. We maybe have time for one more question. I don't see any in the chat. If anybody wants to send one in the next few seconds, I think we can do one more. All right. Seeing none, I will say, we've got a little bit more information that I'm going to share with you. In these next few minutes, if you do think of a question, to send it in anyway, we will get a printout of all the questions that were asked and answer any that we didn't have the time to get to. And so please go ahead and submit them, even if we're going to move on from answering them. So, Christy, next slide, please. We want to thank everyone so much for attending both this webinar and the first webinar in this series. If you were able to attend that last month, we know that this is such an important issue for those that we're working with, not just because of the federal requirement to obtain the credit reports, but just because in general there's so much value for the young people having all the aspects of financial capability, or as much as they can by the time they age out of care. That being said, we understand that there's no way for us to give as much information as there is or to answer any question that people might have. And so saying that, our contact information is right here. Myself, with Program Manager for the Center for States, you can email me any questions. It's matthew.hudson@icfi.com, matthew.hudson@icfi.com. Also, Kori, if you didn't attend the first webinar, she did an awesome job on another tool. It's called the Financial Capability Planning Guide. And so you can contact her for any questions you have, too. She has a wealth of information. Her email is khattemer@cfed.org. So that's khattemer@cfed.org. And then Lynne Wright, who did the presentation today on the toolkit, and her email is lwright, that's LWRIGHT @OU.edu. And then also Kim from Minnesota, DHS, she's their independent living coordinator, and her email is kim.lemcke @state.mn.us. So that's KIM.LEMCKE @STATE.MN.us. And so those are us as presenters. If you'd like more information, next slide please, Christy. We also, our ACF contacts and our who we worked with to get the information for this and develop these guides over the last couple of years. That's Catherine Heath at the Children's Bureau, and her email is catherine.heath@acf.hhs.gov. So that's CATHERINE.HEATH@acf.hhs.gov. And then also Gretchen Lehman, who's also with ACF but works for the Office of Community Services. And so she oversees the Assets for Independence and works with Kori and others at the Corporation for Enterprise Development. And so her email is gretchen.lehman@acf.hhs.gov, and that's GRETCHMAN@ACF.HHS.gov. With that, just closing notes, again want to mention that if you're still watching the webinar, listening to me right now, and you can see the webinar panel on your right, and you're thinking to yourself, are we going to get a copy of these slides? The answer is yes. They're already provided to you on the right side of your screen. Look for the tab that says Handouts. There should be a little numeral 1 next to it. You click the plus sign. It'll pop down with a link to download the PDF. You can download that, and then all the slides that you've seen today are available to you there. In that, when you see the images of the Financial Empowerment Toolkit and the tip sheets, the link is embedded in those, so you can click, or you might have to control-click them to get there. If you're having trouble finding that here in this presentation, that's absolutely okay. We will also be sending it out to all participants in a follow-up email. Along with that PDF, we'll also include just a link to the Children's Bureau website that has these documents available. And for those of you who are still trying, I apologize if the link hasn't been working, but those people who manage the websites are working on it right now. Also, in the follow-up email that you will receive, we will be attaching a survey, and we would really appreciate it if you could provide feedback to us on how you felt this webinar went and how our presenters did. And with that, again, the Capacity Building Center for States thanks you so much. We hope this was valuable. We look forward to hearing any questions or comments you have based on them, and hopefully to presenting more information to you in the future. Thank you so much.
This does conclude today's conference. We thank you for your participation.